my God, I hope that's a plane. I ain't ready for this.
In 1994, police officers in Michigan and Ohio raced through the night, tracking a strange craft in the sky.
It couldn't have been an airplane.
6 years later, another astonishing incident entangles 5 separate police departments in a high-speed pursuit. The shocking events are caught on 911 tapes.
It was like a red pulsating light.
New evidence comes to light.
Oh my God.
This is exciting because it's actual videographic evidence.
When sightings of a reported UFO turn from curious to critical,
at that time we were concerned for his well-being.
Local authorities are forced to react.
This thing was somewhat threatening.
I could use the word fear. I didn't know what it was.
Oh my God.
This is case number 66104, UFO Emergency.
I don't know what I was looking at that time. It just, my defense mechanism was to go for my handgun initially.
December 14th, 1994, an unusually warm night in Trumbull County, Ohio. Around midnight, while most of the town sleeps, a Liberty police sergeant takes a call from a local 911 dispatcher. She's receiving reports of huge lights hovering in the sky. These are actual police recordings from that night.
Sir, I have another report, but also we've been advised by callers there's a blue-green object hovering, no noise. It was in the area. This is just in now.
That night, multiple police departments, Liberty Township, Brookfield, and Howland all report pursuing an unidentified flying object. The officer from Liberty Township suggests he is unprepared for what he is about to witness.
Wait a minute. What? Oh my God, I hope that's a plane. Oh, please be a plane. Oh, please. I ain't ready for this.
To this day, none of the officers who witnessed it can identify it.
This is a great first responder 911 case of a multiple sighting by credible police officers.
This case is actually warming up. It's developing. We've got numerous 911 calls, which we have audio tapes of.
So we're breaking new ground here. We're getting new information that no one else knows about. This means we're on the cutting edge.
Dr. Ted Ackworth and Pat Uskert will seek out police witnesses, and Bill Burns will dig into the 911 tapes with the local MUFON investigator.
We're about to talk to Erin Clark, the Cleveland Ufology Project investigator for the Trumbull County, Ohio case.
Well, it was around midnight or so, and they were getting a lot of phone calls from residents who were scared. There was this object hovering just over the tree line. It was very intensely bright. They sent out some police cruisers to take a look at it. The first one that really saw it really well was Sergeant Bolero.
See some light, a large object, whatever it is. It was like a red pulsating light.
Your radio was advised to be blue and green.
I saw it was red. It was a pulsating light, but it was real big.
The dispatch operator was actually getting information from the officers, but then also calling the airbase and calling the FAA tower.
We've contacted the FAA administration, and one, they've advised nothing on the radar scope within a 60-mile radius. We are continually getting calls on this,
So what's fascinating about the tape is you've got this discrepancy between the 911 operator, who's kind of dismissing it, and the police officers, especially Toby Malaro, who's saying, no, this is real, this is absolutely real.
This thing, whatever it was, lit up, I mean literally lit up. You could stand, if you were underneath it, you could see it was like daylight.
I don't know. If it was a UFO, it's logged, you know. But, I mean, you saw it.
She was trying to find some kind of logical explanation for it. And obviously what he saw was something that he couldn't describe. He's never seen anything like it before.
Both of the key witnesses heard on the tape Sergeant Toby Malaro and the dispatcher, Roy Ann Rudolph, are willing to step forward. Ted and Pat hope to get a clearer picture of exactly what happened that night.
It was just a white blinding light. It was huge. I mean, to me it appeared the whole street was lit up.
He definitely experienced something that no one else who had called in had experienced.
We're about to speak with Sergeant Toby Malaro. Now, when a police officer comes forward to discuss a UFO sighting like this, it really ups the ante.
We've got Roy Ann, who was a dispatcher that night. We are basically about to recreate the sequence of events from that night 14 years ago.
Well, I'd like to know, Toby, what were the first calls? What were the first reports coming in?
Lights in the sky. It wasn't unusual to see lights in the sky.
Sergeant Malaro is at the corner of Trumbull and Belmont when he receives the call from dispatch. He heads north approximately 3 miles to Sampson Drive, where the sightings are being reported.
I am somewhat of a skeptical, and I'm saying this is a plane, this is, you know, I'm not going to find anything. I'm going to see a plane off in the distance. I cruise down here, and my car just shuts off. I'm completely off. Over the tree lines over here, I get out of the car because a light hits my car. I'm going, what the hell?
Sergeant Malaro believes the object he sees is huge. He estimates it may be almost 100 yards across. But what could be capable of immobilizing a fully functioning police vehicle?
Sergeant Malaro sees an object that hovers 60 to 80 feet above his car. That's what's so fascinating, because that object would blot out the sky were he looking up.
I get out of my car, exit my vehicle. When I got out, it was like being in broad daylight. It just was real intense, no sound, no nothing. It's hard to describe the object at this point because it was blinding. I could tell that it may have been cylindrical in nature, or round, somewhat round, but I saw red. There were some round lights, red lights.
So you're looking up at a blinding light.
Yes.
It's totally silent.
Yes.
And it's got a weird shape, a cylindrical shape.
Yes.
What's going through your head at this moment?
I've never seen anything like that.
Malaro's car is still out of commission, and his radio is also not operational. He is unable to call the dispatcher and ask for backup. The officer is completely alone.
Obviously, my training gives me a defensive position. My hand goes to my gun. I'm saying, what, am I going to shoot this object? I'm not going to shoot it.
So to go into a defensive position means that this thing was somewhat threatening.
I could use the word fear. I didn't know what it was.
The dispatcher finally reestablishes radio contact with the officer after several minutes. Officer Malaro remembers it differently.
It only was a matter of seconds. They were telling me that I was off the air for a good 4 minutes when this happened.
I said, Toby, what'd you see? And he elaborated that he saw a light and that he had experienced some kind of vehicular malfunction in his unit, and that his radio wasn't communicating. And then I kind of had a concern because there were so many officers in the outlying areas that were observing that same light, and the same calls continue to come in.
Malaro tells Roy Ann Rudolph that the huge object moved over the trees heading south. At that moment, Malaro said his completely immobilized patrol car restarted without him touching the ignition.
Suddenly the engine on its own starts.
Shut off.
You tried to restart it, so you're running switch, nothing happens. Radio's dead. And then after the object moved away, it restarted on its own.
It restarted.
I've never heard of anything like that happening.
I've never experienced anything like that, so that's 2 of us.
Did this object shut down Toby Malaro's patrol car? And is their technology capable of performing such an action?
I don't know, and maybe we do have planes that are able to shut down your vehicles and do things mechanically with your cars. That I don't know, but that's what this object did.
Do you feel at all like it was some sort of act that the object took on you to shut it down, or do you feel more like it was just an effect that you were within a radius?
I think it was more like I came into an area that was affected somehow by whatever that affected the vehicle, and as that light moved off, that's why my car started.
With power to his vehicle now restored, Malaro gets in his patrol car and rejoins the pursuit with the other officers.
I got back on the radio and told Roy Ann what I was seeing, and she's saying, yeah, we're getting a lot of reports about this light. A lot of people are calling in about this light. At the same time, as I'm pursuing it, I'm having Royanne call the airport to see if they have anything on radar.
I called up, and I swear to you, he goes, I don't have anything in the 16-mile radius of Youngstown. He goes, I'm looking at the radar right now.
Well, this thing wasn't more than about 50 feet off the ground. This thing wasn't making no noise.
After the FAA at Youngstown Airport denies seeing anything on their radar, Rudolph calls the Youngstown Air Force Reserve Base. She is told they have no planes in the area and see nothing.
I contacted the tower twice. When they said, no, there's absolutely nothing in airspace, that's when I think I felt a tinge of alarm, because so many people were seeing this, so many people were experiencing this. There was something there. And too many people that I know to be credible were observing something.
What did you really think it was?
I don't know. Whatever it is, it's big.
The encounter leaves the police officer shaken and dumbfounded by the huge aerial craft, one that the FAA claims doesn't exist.
I pulled in a parking lot. I had to gear down a little bit because I didn't know what I just saw, what I didn't see. I start questioning myself, going, what was that?
But one additional witness comes to the forefront. Royanne Rudolph, concerned for the officers in the field, decides she has to see the object for herself.
Not only was she fielding calls from panicked citizens and in constant communication with Sergeant Malaro, but she also admitted to us something that she's never told anyone else before, that she actually left the station, went out, and saw this object herself.
I did accompany an officer from a local municipality to see what he had been seeing. I can't say it enough. It was a unique experience. I couldn't tell you what I was looking at. It sat very still, and then all at once made a very erratic jutting movement off, and that was the last I saw.
Royanne admitted that she saw the 100-yard light that was slowly floating across the sky over Toby Malaro's car, that stopped Toby Malaro's engine. She admitted she was a witness.
Here we have, to me, what appears to be a totally credible police officer, and it is clear to me that something really happened to him that night. I mean, you can just feel it. It had a great impact on him.
What is it that Sergeant Malaro, Royanne Rudolph, and numerous police officers in Trumbull County saw that night? Is this area a UFO hotspot? Another case from Ohio's past. One of Project Blue Book's top unknown cases may point to a history of cover-up. And a shocking new video may provide a glimpse of the strange objects Sergeant Malaro and other officers are seeing.
Oh my God!
Nothing I know would accelerate that fast. And that I found pretty outstanding.
The team is investigating an alleged UFO seen in December 1994 in Trumbull County, Ohio, that might have disabled a police officer's car. But this is not the first time that Ohio police have pursued strange lights. In 1966, multiple police units from Portage County, Ohio, chased an unidentified object 85 miles into Pennsylvania before it vanished into the sky. In 1957, police in Levelland, Texas received 15 separate calls describing a bizarre egg-shaped object that disables their vehicle as it flies over. The Trumbull County investigation has uncovered a witness who claims to have had a similar encounter with a flying object on the roads of Ohio. The case is part of Project Blue Book, the U.S. government investigation of UFO incidents. Could there be a clue to the present sightings in Trumbull County buried in Ohio's past?
We're about to meet with Tom O'Connor, Navy veteran, who had one of the most incredible close encounter sightings in the history of ufology.
I was headed west toward Chicago when I happened to notice a bright globe in the sky, and I pulled off and on the side of the road and stopped.
Was it larger than a commercial airliner?
I would say you're getting somewhere around the size of a 747.
After observing the craft for a few moments, O'Connor claims an intense light beam illuminates downward, in similar fashion to Toby Malaro's sighting 28 years later.
I started getting a little frightened. You know, I wonder, what is this?
O'Connor seeks shelter underneath his truck. From there, he watches the object move across the cornfield and settle directly above his vehicle.
As it went over top of the trailer started shaking. You know, just shaking a little bit. It was really frightening underneath there. And then it went, pew, it was gone.
Tom's description of the craft's acceleration seems to mirror Roy Ann Rudolph's. Both Tom and Toby Malaro describe a craft with bright beams of light, and both claim their vehicles were disabled by whatever passed overhead. Did all three see the same object 28 years apart? 6 years after Toby Malaro's sighting, it happened again. On January 5th, 2000, the early morning calm of southern Illinois is suddenly shaken. Just before 4 a.m., witnesses report unusual lights in the sky over Highland, Illinois. Here is the actual exchange between a 911 operator and the police.
Well, we just received a call from Highland PD. She said there was a flying object in the area of Lebanon. It was like a two-story house. Leslie, could you check the area?
Just a quick question. If I have to find it, what am I supposed to do with it? If I see it, I'm not saying a word.
The Highland Police Department isn't alone in the sightings. 4 additional police stations report seeing an object: Lebanon, Shiloh, Dupo, and finally, Millstadt.
Be advised, there's a very bright white light east of town, and it keeps changing colors. It doesn't look like an aircraft, though.
The investigation has uncovered a new witness who videotaped the January 2000 event in Millstadt.
Well, we've got 5 police officers, 5 different towns, 5 different police departments, all agreeing that they saw something that they couldn't identify.
We've now also learned we have Nancy, we have another civilian on the front end. We've realized that this case now spans over the course of an entire night, basically from after sunset through sunrise. I mean, to me, it seems to be one of the most credible, well-documented cases that I've seen.
When your video analysis shows us what's there or not there, we'll know a lot more than we know now. And I think that as the investigation proceeds, we're going to be in for some big, big surprises.
To locate this never-before-seen video, Bill meets with investigator Dave Marler from the Mutual UFO Network, who studied the Millstadt case for years.
I mean, after 8 years here, we are actually looking at possible video footage of the object from January 5th, 2000.
You've basically rewritten the whole timeline of this case from the beginning.
It also vindicates all the police officers that came forward with their eyewitness testimony that there was actually an object there.
The original timeline began just before 4 a.m. on January 5th, 2000. But the new video was taken earlier, between 7 and 8 p.m. on January 4th. This now creates an almost 12-hour window where the object was reportedly seen. The new eyewitness, Nancy Carpenter, has never spoken publicly about her sighting or shown her video.
It's the first videographic evidence that's come to light in this case, and we have our hands on it exclusively.
Whoa.
I swear to God, there's like some UFO stuff out here.
Wow, Mike, look at this one take off.
Holy heck.
What the heck? I don't get this.
Did you have any feeling at the time of how far they might be from you?
Maybe 400 or 500 feet.
Are these lights changing formation at all?
Yes, constantly.
Look at it, 4 of them.
Oh, dude. With this one coming right over our house, I would be calling 911 when you hear me get abducted. Keeps getting brighter right at us, dude.
They were all going different directions.
How do you mean? The lights?
They would kind of come together, and then they would disperse. And then one would go up here, one would zigzag and go another direction. So they were all over.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Dude, it's coming right towards your house, though.
Well, it certainly doesn't seem to be behaving like a military vehicle would. I mean, do we have anything that has multiple orbs flying around it? Absolutely indescribable.
I'd like to say yes, but I don't know.
Unless it's a sortie of multiple craft that from the distance, you know, appears unusual. But we have to look at the video closer. I have to say, compared to the other videographic evidence that I see in these cases, it's pretty good. It's 20 minutes long. It was a clear, cold night in January, so it's optically quite good. It's a pretty steady shot. A lot of the video you see, it's shaking in the hands. This is pretty solid. I'm pretty optimistic. I think we might be able to find something really useful out of it.
Ted will take the video for further analysis, while Pat and Bill have tracked down one of 5 police officers who pursued the object that morning.
Syncom 6004.
Go ahead.
I've got that object inside also.
Are you serious?
It's huge.
Having a multiple witness case with such credible individuals and having the police recordings that documented it at the time of the sighting was incredible from an investigator's standpoint. We were able, as a result, to establish a flight pattern.
The flight path that begins in Highland in Lebanon leads the investigation to O'Fallon police officer Mark Lopino. Lopino is on patrol at 4:30 a.m. when he sees something over Highway 50.
I was driving my patrol unit eastbound on Highway 50. I saw what appeared to be some helicopters flying in some sort of formation. It looked like there were floodlights in the front of the helicopters. These lights were huge. I couldn't even tell you the dimension of them. It was probably 100 to 150 feet off the ground, and it was enormous.
Numerous officers sight the object and report what they see to dispatch.
6004, what does it look like to you?
It's kind of B-shaped.
10-4, that's what Shiloh's base.
Now, you actually saw a triangular shape to this craft.
You actually saw a body, or were you just sort of assembling the
I could
formation
see the
of lights?
triangular outline of it. In between the lights, you can see like the edge of it. In between the lights, it appeared to try to camouflage itself with the sky as it moved. It almost made a 90-degree turn. It was going very slowly. They drifted away over the tree line right here. That's why I stopped here. You see that tree line? Rolled my windows down to see if I could hear an engine noise. Couldn't. Backed it up just beyond this tree line to see if I could see it again going over the field. Well, it had moved from that tree line way out over the city of Shiloh, which is further about 2-3 miles south of here.
What is it that police officers and citizens are seeing in these cases? Ted sits down to do a final analysis of the Millstat video, and a digital sketch artist will attempt to visually recreate the object that numerous witnesses saw in the skies of Illinois.
I think it was from another planet.
What we saw that evening was something unexplainable. We seen objects in the sky that definitely weren't from our planet.
The documentation of 911 tapes and testimonies of police officers in Ohio and Illinois have provided the team solid evidence of a strange sighting. Ted is focused on Nancy Carpenter's never-before-seen video, which may provide the first glimpse of what these witnesses are seeing. Ted meets with image analyst and professor at Northeastern University, Terrence Masson.
Well, unfortunately, the overall quality of the footage was of such a low level, we couldn't really discern, from an image processing standpoint, much detail.
But one element of the video seems to defy rational explanation.
One section that was really very interesting. What I've done is stabilize and isolate this section of the video around the center object. There's actually motion of a secondary light source that starts in the upper right-hand corner, and it kind of does this bobbling movement. By stabilizing the video footage, it locks that relative motion that's inherent in the video from a handheld standpoint. It locks down on that center point, and that way we can really clearly see and define that path of that secondary light as being an almost perfect geometric arc.
I wonder if it could be just a ghost or an internal reflection inside the compound lens of the camera.
But a closer look may prove this theory incorrect. Further analysis reveals something that ties the inner light to the circling object.
The really curious thing is that if you zoom in really close, the light actually is pointing at that secondary light source as it moves around, which is really interesting.
Primary light in the center is actually pointing towards and tracking the other one.
We don't have any detail. It's just from one angle, and it is pitch dark. So, but beyond that, it's a little hard to get definitive.
Ted still has questions about the craft's identity, so Bill and Pat go to the origin point, Melvern Knolls Miniature Golf Course.
I'm about to meet with Melvern Knoll, who was the first eyewitness of this UFO that he saw at 4 o'clock in the morning over Highland, Illinois.
So Melvern, can you show us where the light was in the sky that you saw that night?
Right up in the northeast corner, a real tall light coming out of the sky. I mean, it was bright. Then it got right in line with me here, and it seemed like it just about stopped. That's when it scared me. I didn't know, run, get in my truck and get out of here. Then it just took off real slow.
Alarmed, Melvern proceeds to the Highland Police Department to report the object.
The dispatcher was on duty. I told her what I seen, and she believed me. And I told her if she would call Lebanon Police Department. I said, something's heading their way.
Little does Melvern know he has just set in motion a nearly 3-hour pursuit that would stretch from Highland to Belleville. 30 miles south of Highland, and several hours later, school teacher Steve Wanacott witnesses a stationary object in the sky as the sun rises.
We are going to talk to Steve Wanacott, who on the morning of January 5th, 2000, was driving along this very road when he saw a strange configuration of lights in the sky.
It was between a quarter of 6, 7, and 7 o'clock. At first I thought it was some aircraft going to land at St. Louis Downtown Airport here. The more I looked at it, the more apparent it was that this was no ordinary aircraft.
What initially drew your attention to this object?
As I was watching it, the sun was coming up and the sky was lighting. And it looked like it was just sitting there in the sky.
With Steve and Melvern possibly seeing the same object, Ted has brought in CGI artist John Bavaresco to interview them individually and see if their descriptions have a common link.
Melvern, you're one of the key witnesses of this case, so I felt like the best we could do, considering the circumstances, would be to get your description, create a model that accurately depicts what you saw that night.
So what was the overall shape of the craft?
From my angle of it, it looked like a side of a house.
Any details that you could make out?
No, just the inside. They had 6 windows, and they were all
6 windows,
all lit up.
Okay.
And after it left, I could see this back, and they had like bars across.
And you could actually make out a bit of the craft and not just the lights from the craft?
Just a side view of it, and it just looked like a floating house.
Steve Wanacott's description of the craft also needs to be documented. Ted knows that their stories may vary to some degree. But just as a sketch artist is used to identify a suspect, this is his best tool for objectively identifying what was seen in the sky.
It was in the shape of an arrowhead, I suppose. More of an arrowhead because it was curved across the back.
The back side, okay. Were the lights positioned roughly this location?
It appeared to me that they were spaced evenly across the back.
Okay.
As I observed it, the sun was coming up behind me, and it became more and more clear. It was kind of a metallic finish, kind of dull, not shiny. The more I looked at it, the more it seemed different from anything I had seen.
As far as I know, I don't think we have anything that would even come close to what they were doing.
I kind of dismissed it as like, well, I'm not really seeing what I saw. There's a logical explanation for it.
I think it was from another planet.
Did these witnesses see something terrestrial or extraterrestrial? John creates 2 computer animations of the craft based on the interviews. The only way to know if the sketches are accurate is to show the finished version to eyewitnesses for verification.
And this is the final render.
Oh wow, that's it. That's what I saw. Yeah.
What do you think, Melvin?
And that's what I've seen.
And you've never seen anything like that before or since?
I haven't.
With both Steve and Melvern confirming their separate renderings, there are clearly discrepancies in what they saw.
Based on the conversations with Steve Wanacott, I came up with a 3D version of what I believe he saw. Melvern saw something rather different.
There are some discrepancies in their descriptions, but that could be explainable through the different viewing conditions, the time of night and the distance.
The two objects do share some important characteristics, such as brightly lit windows and lights on the bottom of the craft.
I tend to think it was perhaps more of the form that Steve Wanacott saw, as opposed to what Melvern saw. Strictly because at night it's very easy to mistake geometric forms.
There does seem to be a fair amount of overlap between the objects described, which does lead me to believe that Steve and Melvern could have been seeing the same object.
With multiple police officer accounts, digital recreations from eyewitness testimony, and newly discovered video, the team is closer than ever to the truth behind these mysteries. But one final case may prove to be the one that started this wave of modern police sightings.
Oh my God, what is that?
All of a sudden it jumped bizarrely and was making strange erratic movements that I couldn't really explain.
The sightings in Trumbull County, Ohio and southern Illinois have led the investigation to Holland, Michigan, and the case that may have sparked these recent police sightings. The Holland case takes place 9 months before Trumbull County. Is this where it all began?
Okay, what do you have there, sir? There were at least 4 lights, and they were all flashing, and they were blinking back and forth. And there's no way, I mean, a plane's not that wide.
March 8th, 1994, Holland, Michigan, 9:30 p.m. Residents gather outdoors to gaze at the aurora borealis, or northern lights. As the well-known phenomenon appears in the northern skies, an altogether different series of lights to the south captures their attention. A Holland police officer also sees the strange lights, but is unable to identify just what they are. He asks the dispatcher to contact the National Weather Service to see if they have the objects on radar.
I can't even explain how fast they were going. It was like they'd be here 1 minute and the next minute they were over here.
And within 2, maybe 3 minutes, it took off.
Whether or not we'll ever find out what it actually was, I don't know.
We're here at Cindy Pravda's house. She is one of the eyewitnesses that saw the lights that occurred back in 1994, and we're here to get a first-hand account.
This is where I was when I saw the UFOs. I was on the phone talking to a friend of mine. They were over the tree line. There was 4 of them. They're huge lights. It dawned on me that UFOs in my backyard.
We're talking about points of light?
A ball of light.
Did you see any sort of craft connecting these lights?
No, I did not. And I never thought that it was one spaceship. I always automatically thought that it was 4 different UFOs.
At the same time, a newspaper reporter observes a huge object in the sky. But unlike Cindy Pravda, who sees 4 balls of light, Lee Lamberts sees the distinct outline of one craft.
I walked out the back door and I hear this faint humming noise, and I just happened to look up in the sky and there's this huge arc-like craft up there. It had running lights. They were like the running lights along the bottom of it, alternating white and green lights.
How big is big?
Oh, bigger than a football field, maybe. At least the size of a football field. It was monstrous.
Multiple people are seeing the same object. The large size is consistent with the stories from Trumbull County and southern Illinois. If this is the same craft, the one person who may know is Dr. Michael Swords. Swords, a well-respected UFO investigator, researched the event in 1994.
What I hope to do with Dr. Swords here today is to get his help to try to establish in geographic position and time the correlations between the different data. I want to see on the radar traces the same times and locations that we're getting 911 calls.
Yeah, this is the National Weather Service in Muskegon. I was calling to make sure that the person that called me was really a sheriff from out of a county in Idaho. He was one of our dispatchers. So what really is going on? We got a report of 3 to 4 lights going at a high rate of speed up and down and all over the sky.
So Dr. Swords, we have the 911 calls, we have the sightings from the ground, then we have these radar traces, and you're the only person who's actually gotten in to the radar operator to have a formal interview.
We were invited into the exact area where the young man did the observations. He demonstrated this is what this kind of, say, a plane return looks like. And then he said to us something that was very interesting. He said, you know, the blips that we got that night were at least as bright as you get from commercial aircraft, but they were 4 times as big. When the radar operator first sees this thing, it is at it's high-ish, like 18,000 or so feet, but it's not very, very high. And within 15 seconds, it moves up a distance so that in order to have done that, it means it's moving about 1,000 miles per hour.
None of our aircraft 14 years ago, or even today, nothing could execute vertically at 1,000+ miles per hour.
That's right.
Sustained over that distance.
And then the very next thing he sees is perhaps even stranger. This thing breaks from one object into 3. Now, that's just fundamentally mysterious.
As you listen to those 911 dispatch recordings, that's where you can see some of the emotion coming in when he's seeing in real time what the witnesses are seeing in real time.
I'm getting it now at about 12,000 feet. Now I'm getting multiple returns. Oh my God, what is that?
I think it's brilliant evidence. I think if you folks can make any good correlative connections between the witness testimonies as they're coming in over 911 and with the radar operators excited saying, oh, this is what's happening now, this is what happened now, you will add to this case what's been missing.
There is a connection. Cindy Pravda says she observed several balls of light. Unbeknownst to her, these objects were also being tracked on radar. And now, 14 years later, the Michigan radar operator who saw these objects on his scope can finally confirm if these sightings are beyond conventional explanation. The investigation of emergency responses to alleged UFO events throughout the Midwest has led to Holland, Michigan, 32 miles southwest of Grand Rapids. On March 8, 1994, panicked citizens begin calling in reports of strange lights to the 911 operators. Holland police pursue and locate the object and ask for confirmation from local radar. Bill has tracked down the radar operator heard on the 911 tapes. On that night, he is working in the area's official National Weather Service radar tower in Muskegon. For the first time on camera, the radar operator comes forward to help revisit the case. His name is Jack Bouchon.
Jack, can you walk us through what happened that night?
Well, first of all, it was a very cold, clear night. The dispatcher told me that the officer was in Holland, but he was kind of chasing the lights. I was just taking my radar and going back and forth like this, looking for something. And finally, at about 15,000 feet, I picked up something. It's this highly reflective object down there in South Haven.
Bouchon can be heard on the 911 tapes conversing with the dispatcher.
An officer in the Holland City just sent me a message. He says, you know, can we identify anything further? He says, it looks like 3 to 4 of them. They're just popping up all over the place. These are huge returns. I've never seen anything like this.
The thing is before I could even get the sentence out, it had actually changed positions.
You said, I've never seen things do this like this before.
No, it was very bizarre.
Jack knows the radar readings won't be retained. He makes a record of what he sees that night in the form of these sketches he's showing for the very first time.
The officer actually said he saw what looked like the single object from a great distance away from him split up, and all of a sudden he was seeing 3 sets of lights in the sky at the same time that I was telling the dispatcher that I was seeing multiple returns.
Now I'm getting 3 of them. They're separated by about 50 kilometers. They're very strong returns. They look like a triangle on my scope. They're spiking, so there's something pretty solid.
Amazingly, Jack Bouchon observes on his radar screen what the Holland police officer and other witnesses report to the 911 operator.
Going up and down at high rates of speed, never seen anything move so fast.
Now I'm getting multiple returns.
This thing breaks from one object into 3.
3 to 4 lights going at a high rate of speed.
It was 4 different UFOs.
What you were watching that night was objects that actually did things airplanes don't do.
Exactly. I never saw them make any curves, round curves like an aircraft would. They would go from one place and then they would jump to another, and they would always be at right angles.
Bouchon tracks the objects for nearly 2 hours, watching them move at speeds faster than conventional aircraft.
They ranged anywhere from 15,000 to 50,000 feet. I couldn't believe I was seeing them that high. The range height indicator was showing multiple objects. I mean, not too many to count, several dozen. Just kind of a blob right over the middle of Lake Michigan, spread out by at least 30 miles or so.
Eventually, Bouchon is unable to track the objects any longer, and they disappear. The alleged Holland UFO is never fully explained by authorities. If the FAA in Chicago observed these objects, they never acknowledge it. In fact, according to the FAA, it's not even possible to verify. As Jack Bouchon knew when he created his charts, the FAA destroys its records every 6 months.
So I did see something, and I've never seen anything like that before.
14 years after the event, Bouchon is unwavering. What he monitored on the radar were not aircraft, nor could the anomalies be attributed to weather conditions.
We've got the radar data corroborating with the eyewitnesses on the ground with the 911 calls. We have 2 totally independent sources of information that are corroborating it.
And here's what's so exciting. Professor Sword's interview with Jack Bouchon and our interview with Jack Bouchon completely mesh. The story hasn't changed in 14 years.
Whatever appeared over Holland, Michigan on March 8, 1994, Trumbull County, December 14, 1994, and over multiple towns in southern Illinois on January 5, 2000, police officers, 911 and radar operators were drawn into unexplained events and elevated the cases to worldwide attention. It also raises the specter that the crafts may be related in some way.
See some lights, it's a large object, whatever it is.
When this is a systemic effect occurring across multiple state and federal agencies, it's really hard to dismiss.
Because many of these witnesses are trained observers, their credibility is even greater. And that's what makes these cases so compelling.
I'm struck by the size of these craft. They're huge, they're bright, they float, they hover, they zip out of sight. Where could these craft be from, and who's behind this?
And now, video evidence and digital renderings are providing the first glimpses of what these witnesses observed. Could they simply be advanced military vehicles yet to be revealed? Or are extraterrestrial aircraft engaging common citizens?
Oh my God!
The team has uncovered important new facts, and the investigation continues.